Hello, everyone. My name is Oktay Alju, and welcome to Teaching Phonics to Kids Week 1. This is a new course that we are having right now. It's a 2 week long course, and we are in the week 1 right now. Let me warn you beforehand, this is going to be heavy on reading part. We're going to learn very technical stuff in this week. I'm not so sure about I'm not sure about next week. How's it gonna go? How's it gonna be? I'm not so sure. But this week is going to be very heavy on reading stuff, and so let's just start. Let's look at our outline here. Where our outline here is, we're gonna look at why is phonics important. After that, we're gonna look at what is phonics, and we're going to look at some very technical terms that I think we should learn, but they're a bit boring. And we are going to explore phonics at the very end. And after that, I'm going to give you some 5 questions, which can be relatively easy or relatively hard, depending on how much attention you're giving to me right now. So let's just start with why is phonics important. Well, English language, as we all know, is a phonetic language, and this means that every sound, every alphabetic letter has a sound corresponding to them in the alphabet itself, right? So the letter A has a sound correspondent as A, right? And there are, let me tell you, 26 letters in the English language. It's a very fundamental thing that we should know. So, because of that, because of the English language is a phonetic language, phonics plays a really big part in our learning our reading skills and writing skills. It helps us tremendously, should I say, because it's a very fundamental thing that we should learn. And, as we all know, again, English language is a complex language. I mean, almost everything has an exception. There are like many different combinations of sounds, many different combinations of words. But there are still some ground rules that everyone and everything that follows it. So we should know some of these rules. And by learning these rules through phonics, kids can become successful decoders of these rules, and they can become one step closer to being literate, which means like being able to read and write. So overall, phonics helps us to read, write, and decode the rules of the English language whilst making us literate. So that's why it's important. So we have technical terms right now, and I have listed them all in the alphabetic order. So we're going to start with alphabetical principle. Let me warn you beforehand, these are just going to be a tad bit boring to read, but I think we need to learn all of them. And I'm sorry if you're hearing wind sounds, it's pretty windy right now. So bear with me throughout this whole technical terms thing. And let's start right now. Well, alphabetic principle. The alphabetic principle is the understanding that words are composed of sounds that correspond to letters. As we mentioned, English language is a phonetic language, and this refers to that. And after that, we have code-related literacy, which is the insights into print knowledge, phonics, phonemic awareness, and phonological awareness. After that, we have comprehension. I'm sure we all know what comprehension is, but let's look at it once more. Comprehension is a process where the reader applies their own background knowledge to create understanding. In order to have a meaning, you add something that you've known previously before, and you get a meaning by that. That's comprehension. And after that, we have consonants. We all know consonants from our previous MOOCs, but let's take a look at them once more. Well, a consonant is a basic speech sound where the breath is partly obstructed and a letter that represents a consonant sound, like B, M, P, S, T, C, anything other than vowels are consonants. So, we all know that. We all know what consonants are. After that, we have fluency. Again, we all know what fluency is, which is reading at an appropriate pace, smoothly, automatically, and with expression. And then we have literacy, as I mentioned before, which is the ability to read and write. And then we have oral language, which is the use of spoken words to express knowledge, feeling, and ideas. And we have, I think, one of the most important technical terms that we can learn here, which is phoneme. Well, a phoneme is the smallest unit of sounds in oral language, or just basically, just sounds. The English language has, as I mentioned before, 26 letters in its alphabet. So, if you just think straight, there would be like 26 different sounds or 26 different phonemes. But the number of phonemes actually differs around 44 to 46. I mean, just the letter A has, I think, three different phonemes, like A, and R, can all change. And we have phonemic awareness, which is, I think, a very important thing for us to learn. Well, phonemic awareness is the ability to manipulate individual phonemes or sounds, as we mentioned, to form spoken words. And we have phonics itself, the main topic that we have here. But phonics is the relationship between graphemes. Graphemes are the letters in the alphabet, just basically A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and phonemes, as we mentioned, smallest units of oral language or just sounds in reading and writing. So what phonics is, they're just a relationship between the letters in the alphabet and the sound correspondence to them in reading and writing. And then we have phonics instruction in the relationship between letters and sounds and applying the knowledge to reading and spelling. So this basically means, applying what you have learned in phonics into reading and spelling. It's just an applying term. After that, we have phonological awareness. I think this is another great term that we should learn. It is the ability to detect and manipulate larger units of sound structures, such as syllables and rhymes. Kids can, how should I say it? Kids can, differentiate or, decode the words greater when they are decoding it as syllables or rhymes, like banana. It's easier for a kid to decode it as like that. And another technical term we have here is rhyme. We all know what rhyme is, rhyming, like as you see here, moon, spoon, hat, bat, house, mouse, these are all rhymes, but let's just look at the technical definition of it. Well, a rhyme is, they are just some words that have the same sound ending that can be spelled the same way or differently, like freight and rate, or moon, spoon, hat, bat, house, and mouse that we have here as an example. And then we have rhyme. The words rhyme and rhyme are rhymes. Well, a rhyme is the vowel and any consonant that follows after that vowel, like cat, bat, mat, or jug, rug, tug, bug, and hug. These UGs and ATs are rhymes. And as we all know, we have syllables. We all know what syllables are. A syllable is a segment of speech that contains a vowel sound, as I've mentioned it before, banana or watermelon, right? Kids can easily decode or destructuralize, deconstruct the words easier like this using syllables. And at the very end, a term that we are all so acquainted because of our previous MOOCs from the first term, which is vowel. Well, we all know what vowel is, but let's look at the definition. Well, a vowel is a speech sound where the vocal tract is mostly open and a letter that represents a vowel sound like A, E, I, O, and U, We all know what a vowel is. So let's take a look at a video where Dr. Stacey Campbell, which is from Australia. So let us look at her explanation of what is phonics and what it isn't. So I'm going to start now, and I sure hope that you can hear the sound itself. If you don't, there are subtitles as well.
The aim of phonics instruction is to develop an understanding of the alphabetic principle. That is, the understanding that words are composed of letters, graphemes, that represent sounds, phonemes. Phonics refers to the relationship between graphemes and phonemes. Learning phonics is not as easy as, say, learning to name the letters of the alphabet and matching these 26 letters to 26 sounds. There are actually 44 to 46 sounds in the English language, depending on accent and dialect. An example of matching one letter to one sound occurs, say, when the letter A is taught as only representing one sound, A, as in the word cat. The letter A actually represents 3 sounds, including the long vowel sound A as in April and the sound R as in after. Phonics actually becomes even more complex when children learn that some identical letter combinations produce different sounds. For example, the letters O, U, G, and H, known as a quadgraph. They make several distinct sounds, say, in words though, through, thought, and tough. Before young children can map these sounds to letters in whole words, they need to have developed phonemic awareness and phonological awareness. Both of these terms relate to oral language, that is, what is spoken, whereas phonics refers to, say, both sounds in oral language and how these map or match to letter symbols. Before children can actually begin to decode text, they need to have engaged in a range of literacy experiences, specifically using oral language. Many children have already developed some alphabetic literacy prior to starting school. Children often learn about letters through experiences, say, at home or in the early childhood setting. For example, watching Sesame Street, writing their name, and playing with rhymes. Some children, however, are developing oral language skills and would find the complexities of learning to map sounds to abstract letters really challenging. This is how you can make a difference in supporting children to understand code-related literacy by focusing on oral language.
Well, that was it. That was the explanation of Dr. Stacy Campbell. As I have explained phonics, phonics is just a relationship between graphemes and phonemes, and she just explained it better than me because she's, a doctor. Let's continue with how to teach phonics. Well, there are 4 mainstream ways of to teach phonics. Let's take a look at them. The first one is explicit teaching, the second one is embedded teaching, the third one is synthetic teaching, and the fourth one is analytic teaching. Well, these are just the 4 mainstream ways that you can use in order to, teach your kids or teach any kid phonics. Well, phonics can be taught through more prescriptive frameworks such as systematic, explicit instruction with an emphasis on synthetic phonics by using these mainstream ways of teaching phonics. And let me tell you, you're not bound to teach phonics with one of these 4 ways. You can mix them up, you can combine them, or you can just not even use any of them if you want. But you can combine them, like you can mix synthetic way of teaching and explicit way of teaching together, and you can teach it like that. For example, phonics and phonological awareness are explicitly taught whilst children are engaged in play-based, contextualized, child-centered learning, such as shared reading with adults and singing rhymes and dramatic play. Using contextual games and commercialized programs are very, very important to teach phonics. These are just ways that you can use the mainstream ways of teaching. Having some games, having some plays, dramatic plays, and all that. Another example that we can give here is that you can use, as I mentioned, commercial programs and blend it with something contextual, like a game, like a dramatic play, right? And you can use contextual games, as I mentioned, and programs such as Phonics, Letterland, and Reading Eggs. These 3 commercial programs, Phonics, Letterland, and Reading Eggs, are very popular in Australia and England. And in Australia and also in England, uh, they are there are debates about teaching kids phonics, should they not teach kids phonics. I think in England they are teaching them, but in Australia it's a big debate. Uh, it's been going on for a while now, if I remember correctly. So let us return to Dr. Stacey Campbell for phonemes.
As adults, we often forget how we learn to read and write. Can you actually remember the first time you identified a letter and made a connection between a letter sound? Me neither. Let's explore the International Phonetic Alphabet, known as the IPA. You might have seen the IPA when using an online dictionary to define or pronounce a word, like couch, for example. But do you know the name of each of those IPA symbols and the sounds that they represent? This is what it can be like for young children. You see, they see symbols in their environment, but they don't actually know what they mean. Here's a couple of sections from the IPA. You can see the alphabet symbols also have an example of an associated sound. Using a simplified version, I'd like you to try and sound out the phrase cats and dogs. Now pause the video, try writing the corresponding letter to the sounds you hear in cats and dogs. With my Australian accent, using the IPA, the phrase looks like this: cats and dogs. If you simply wrote this phrase letter for letter, then it isn't really representing the sounds in your spoken words. We don't actually say in conversation, cats and dogs. We skip some sounds and say instead of and we use it as for dogs. How'd you go with this? Did it take you a while to do? This is kind of what it's like for young children to begin to learn how to map those sounds they know as letters.
And yeah, that was all. She mentioned some IPA charts, and she also showed us some exercise about the IPA chart, and what, like, which sounds represents which uh, symbol in the IPA chart. But I do not want you to do that because we are all experienced with IPA chart from our first term. We all know what IPA chart is. We all know what kind of symbols make what kind of sounds and all that. So I don't want to dwell on the past. So, you know, phonemes, as we mentioned, are just sounds, like the correspondent sounds of the letters in the alphabet. And there are 44 to 46, depending on your accent. And yeah, that was it. So let's take a look at explaining phonological awareness. We have mentioned this before, but let's take a look at it again. Like as we mentioned before, phonological awareness is the ability to detect and manipulate the larger units of sounds, for example, rhyme and syllables. Phonological awareness is important for children in the prior to school years, and a research that has been conducted suggests, it is easier to attend to larger units of sound, such as rhymes and counting syllables, than it is to attend to the smaller units of sound as in phonemic awareness. As I mentioned before, kids tend to deconstruct words in a larger in larger units because it might seem easier to them. They don't want to delve into like individual letters and individual rules and such because they're kids. It might sound boring to them, so they will not just want to do that. So that was it. Overall, and all in all, phonics is a necessary way that we must use in order to help kids to be literate through the ways of commercialized teaching programs, contextualized games, and combination of all and the four mainstream ways of teaching phonics and all that. Everything and anything can be used in order to teach phonics, or you cannot even use any of these commercialized teaching programs or contextualized games. You can make up your own way to teach it, but it is a must that we must, teach phonics to kids in order them for to become more and more literate, easier to read and write and express their feelings and all that. Phonics helps that. So that was the end of it. So we have questions now, 5 questions for you. The first question is a very big one. what is phonics? A, is it the relationship between graphemes and phonemes? Or B, letters in the alphabet? C, the awareness of sounds? D, differentiation between rhymes and syllables? Or E, sounds in oral language? Well, the answer we have here is A, the relationship between graphemes and phonemes. Graphemes are the letters in the alphabet, and phonemes are the sounds. Second question we have here is how many phonemes are there in the English language? Is it A, between 13 to 16, or B, 23 to 26, or C, 26 to 29, or D, 44 to 46, or E, 46 to 50? And before you answer, let me give you a tip. There are 26 letters in the English language. But the answer we have here is D, 44 and 46. Even though there are 26 letters, there are 44 phonemes. Well, let's look at the third question. What is phonological awareness? Is it A, the awareness of the small units of sound, or B, connections between letters and sounds, or C, the ability to manipulate larger units of sounds, or D, the alphabetical correspondence of sounds, or E, none of the above? We have mentioned it just before the questions itself, and it's C, the ability to manipulate larger units of sounds. Let's take a look at the fourth question. Which one does not belong to the four mainstream ways of teaching phonics? Is it A, synthetic, B, explicit, C, embedded, D, analytic, or E, experimental? Well, experimental is not one of the four mainstream ways of teaching phonics, but you can still experiment and try to find your own way because you're not bound to teach phonics by using only one of them or a combination of those. You can find your own way. So you can also do experimental, but it's not one of the four mainstream ways of teaching. So the answer is E. And for the last question, which is, what is phonemic awareness? Again, we have mentioned in the previous slide, just before question segment. Is it A, the ability to manipulate smaller phonemes, B, the ability to manipulate larger phonemes, or C, the ability to read and write, or D, a part of a word that includes a vowel, or E, the use of spoken words to express knowledge, feelings, and ideas? Well, the answer here is the ability to manipulate smaller phonemes. And that was it. Thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you for watching my presentation. I hope I can see you in the next week. So see you later until then.